The drone footage was crystal clear. Karen Mitchell, our HOA president for the past 8 years, loading my supposedly abandoned BMW into a car carrier truck at 3 in the morning. The same car she'd declared a neighborhood eyesore just 2 weeks earlier. The same car she'd threatened to have towed if I didn't remove it within 72 hours. The same car that was now apparently heading to a luxury auto auction house, with Karen pocketing the profits. My name is David Chen, and I thought I knew everything about Willowbrook Gardens, our prestigious gated community of 230 homes. I'd lived here for 12 years, served on 3 different committees, and even voted for Karen in every election since 2016, but nothing could have prepared me for what I was about to uncover. It started 3 weeks ago when I received one of Karen's infamous violation notices. You know the type. The bright orange paper that makes your neighbors peek through their curtains and whisper about your property management skills. This particular notice was for my 2020 BMW X5, which had been parked in my driveway for exactly 6 days while I waited for insurance approval after a minor fender bender. Violation notice. The paper screamed in bold red letters. Vehicle appears abandoned and constitutes a neighborhood eyesore. Resident has 72 hours to remove or face towing at owner's expense. Fine, $500 per day after initial notice period. I laughed at first. Abandoned, the car was practically new, worth $68,000, and sitting in my own driveway with current registration visible through the windshield. But this was Karen Mitchell we were talking about, the woman who'd fined Mrs. Patterson $300 for having her garbage cans visible from the street for longer than 12 hours after pickup. The same Karen who'd threatened legal action against the Johnsons for painting their front door navy blue instead of the HOA Approved colonial blue. Apparently, there was a difference only she could detect. Karen had been our HOA president since 2016, running unopposed every election cycle. Not because she was beloved, but because nobody else wanted to deal with her iron-fisted management style and seemingly endless capacity for creating new rules. She was 52 years old, always impeccably dressed in her signature red blazer and matching glasses, blonde hair pulled back in a perfect chignon that never seemed to move, even in strong winds. But here's the thing about Karen. She was effective. Our property values had increased by 37% during her tenure. Common areas were maintained to perfection, and somehow, despite her reputation for being difficult, she'd managed to keep our monthly HOA fees lower than comparable communities. Most residents tolerated her strict enforcement because the results spoke for themselves. So when I received the violation notice, I did what any reasonable person would do. I called Karen directly. Mitchell residence. Karen speaking. Her voice was crisp, professional, with just a hint of impatience that suggested she'd rather be doing anything else than talking to a rule-breaking resident. Hi Karen, it's David Chen from Oak Street. I received a notice about my BMW being abandoned, but there seems to be some mistake. The car isn't abandoned, it's just waiting for insurance repairs. There was a pause, the sound of papers shuffling. Mr. Chen. According to Municipal Code Section 12- any vehicle that remains stationary for more than 72 consecutive hours constitutes abandonment, regardless of the reason. The appearance of abandonment is what matters for property values, not the technical legal status. But Karen, it's in my own driveway. Surely there's some flexibility here. Her laugh was cold, calculating. Mr. Chen, rules exist for a reason. If we start making exceptions, where does it end? Next week, Mrs. Rodriguez will want to leave her broken-down truck in her yard for a month because it has sentimental value. The month after, someone else will claim their rusted van as a classic car restoration project. Property values don't care about individual circumstances. She was right, technically, but something about her tone bothered me. There was an eagerness there, an almost predatory satisfaction that went beyond simple rule enforcement. What exactly happens if the car isn't moved? I asked. After 72 hours, the HOA has the right to have it towed and disposed of according to state abandoned vehicle statutes. The owner is responsible for all towing, storage, and disposal fees, plus the daily fines I mentioned. Of course, if the vehicle has any remaining value after expenses, any surplus would be returned to the owner. Any surplus would be returned. What does that mean exactly? Another pause. Longer this time. Mr. Chen, I suggest you focus on moving your vehicle rather than hypothetical situations. You have 47 hours remaining. The line went dead. That conversation bothered me for the rest of the day. Something about Karen's demeanor seemed off. In 8 years of dealing with her rigid enforcement, I'd never heard her sound quite so interested in the outcome of a violation. Usually, she delivered bad news with the enthusiasm of someone reading a grocery list. But today, there had been something different, something that sounded almost like anticipation. That evening, I decided to do some research. I pulled up our HOA's financial records publicly available to all residents and started looking at the line items for enforcement and disposal fees. What I found made my blood run cold. In the past 2 years, our HOA had processed 47 abandoned vehicle removals. In a community where most residents drove cars worth more than $50,000 and took meticulous care of their property. The disposal fees listed averaged $8,200 per vehicle, which seemed astronomically high for simple towing and scrapping. But here's what really caught my attention. Every single abandoned vehicle removal had occurred during months when Karen had requested emergency board meetings for budget adjustments, and every single one had happened to residents who'd had recent disputes with the HOA about other violations. Mrs. Patterson's abandoned Mercedes had been towed in June, just 3 weeks after her garbage can violation. The Johnsons' eyesore pickup truck had been removed in September, exactly 1 month after their door color dispute. The pattern was unmistakable once you knew what to look for. I spent the next 2 days digging deeper, cross-referencing violation notices with board meeting minutes, financial records with resident complaints. What emerged was a picture of systematic targeting. Karen wasn't just enforcing rules, she was weaponizing them. But I still needed proof, real evidence that would hold up if I decided to take this to the authorities. That's when I remembered my neighbor Jake's new hobby. Jake Morrison had recently retired from his job as a software engineer and had developed an obsession with drone photography. His DJI Air 3S was equipped with a 4K camera and could capture incredibly detailed footage from heights up to 400 feet. More importantly, Jake was a night owl who often flew his drone in the early morning hours when the lighting was perfect for photography. Jake, I called him on Tuesday evening. I need a favor. Could you keep an eye on my driveway tomorrow night? I think someone might be planning to mess with my car. He was immediately intrigued. Like vandalism. I can definitely set up some surveillance. What time should I be watching? Honestly, I'm not sure. Maybe starting around midnight? Just keep the drone hovering somewhere it can see my driveway, but won't be obvious. Consider it done, neighbor. My drone can run silent mode and has excellent night vision capabilities. Wednesday passed without incident. My BMW remained untouched in the driveway, and I began to wonder if I was just being paranoid. Maybe Karen really was just enforcing legitimate rules, and I was reading too much into coincidences. But Thursday morning, at 3:47 a.m., Jake's excited knocking woke me up. David, you need to see this footage. You're not going to believe what I caught. We rushed to his house, where he'd already uploaded the drone footage to his computer. The timestamp showed 2:53 a.m. when a white tow truck with Premier Auto Recovery painted on the side pulled quietly into my driveway. But instead of the usual tow truck operator, the person directing the loading operation was unmistakably Karen Mitchell, still in her red blazer even at 3 in the morning. The footage was damning. Karen supervised as my BMW was loaded onto the truck, checking something on her phone multiple times and taking photos of the vehicle from various angles. But the most shocking part came next. Instead of heading toward the municipal impound lot, the truck turned toward the highway, in the direction of Barrett's Luxury Auto Auction, a high-end dealership known for selling estate sale vehicles and insurance recoveries. Jake, please tell me you recorded all of this. He grinned, his face lit by the computer screen, every second in full 4K resolution. But David, there's something else. Look at this. He pulled up a different file, dated 3 weeks earlier. I've been cataloging all my flights, and I happened to capture this the night Mrs. Patterson's Mercedes disappeared. The video showed an identical scene. Karen Mitchell, 3 a.m., white tow truck, luxury vehicle heading toward Barrett's auction house. How many more of these do you have? Jake's expression grew serious. I've been flying almost every night for 6 months. If this is a pattern, my footage might have captured everything. We spent the next 4 hours going through Jake's archived recordings. What we found was a sophisticated operation that had been running right under our noses for over 2 years. Karen had been systematically targeting residents with expensive vehicles, creating violations that would justify towing, and then redirecting those vehicles to Barrett's auction house instead of the municipal impound. But as we watched the final piece of footage, Karen shaking hands with someone outside Barrett's office while counting a thick envelope of cash, I realized we'd stumbled onto something much bigger than HOA corruption, because the man she was shaking hands with was City Councilman Bradley Morrison, Jake's own uncle. The family connection changed everything. This wasn't just about one corrupt HOA president anymore. What would you do if you discovered your HOA president was stealing cars with help from city government? Drop your thoughts in the comments. The drone footage showed everything. Karen Mitchell, our trusted HOA president, personally supervising the theft of my BMW at 3 a.m. But the man shaking her hand outside Barrett's luxury auto auction wasn't just any accomplice. He was City Councilman Bradley Morrison, Jake's own uncle. The silence in Jake's living room was deafening as we processed what we'd just discovered. This wasn't just HOA corruption anymore. This was a conspiracy involving city government, and Jake's family was right in the middle of it. Jake, I said carefully, how well do you know your Uncle Bradley? Jake's face had gone pale, his hands trembling slightly as he replayed the footage. Uncle Brad, I mean, we see him at family gatherings, holidays. He's been on the city council for about 6 years now. Always talks about improving our community and protecting property values. He paused, staring at the screen. David, there's no way he knows about this. Uncle Brad wouldn't. But even as Jake said it, I could see the doubt creeping into his eyes. Because if there was one thing the footage made crystal clear, it was that Bradley Morrison knew exactly what was happening. The handshake wasn't casual. The envelope of cash wasn't accidental. This was a well-established business transaction. Jake, I need you to think carefully. Has your uncle ever asked about your drone flights? About what you've recorded? Jake's face went from pale to green. Oh God. Last month, at my mom's birthday party, he kept asking about my little flying camera. He wanted to know what areas I covered, what times I usually flew, whether I kept recordings. Jake's voice trailed off as the implications hit him. He was gathering intelligence, making sure the operation stayed hidden. We spent the next hour systematically going through every piece of footage Jake had captured over the past 8 months. What emerged was a criminal enterprise far more sophisticated than either of us had imagined. The pattern was always the same. Karen would issue violation notices for expensive vehicles, wait exactly 72 hours for maximum legal protection, then coordinate with Premier Auto Recovery for nighttime pickups. But here's what made it truly diabolical. The vehicles weren't just being stolen. They were being legally hijacked through deliberate manipulation of municipal codes. Bradley Morrison had been quietly pushing through city ordinance changes over the past 3 years, each one designed to expand HOA enforcement powers. Ordinance 24-47 gave HOAs authority to determine abandonment based on appearance rather than actual legal status. Ordinance 31-12 allowed HOAs to select their own preferred towing contractors without competitive bidding. Ordinance 30-93, passed just 4 months ago, gave HOA presidents emergency powers to authorize immediate vehicle removal in cases of community safety or property value protection. This is insane, Jake muttered as we cross-referenced the ordinance states with Karen's violation escalations. They've been changing the laws to make their theft ring legal. But the most damning evidence came when we compared Barrett's auction house sales records with RHOA's financial statements. Barrett's was supposedly an independent business, but their sales dates aligned perfectly with Karen's emergency budget meetings. Even more suspicious, Barrett's auction prices were consistently 20 to 30% below market value, suggesting the vehicles were being sold quickly to avoid detection. Then Jake made a discovery that changed everything. "David, look at this." He'd pulled up the city's business licensing database. Barrett's luxury auto auction isn't owned by some random businessman. The registered owner is Morrison Holdings LLC, established in January 2021. Want to guess who the listed partners are? My stomach dropped. Bradley Morrison and Karen Mitchell. They're 50-50 partners in Barrett's. They're not just stealing our cars, they own the entire operation, from theft to sale. The scope of the conspiracy was breathtaking. Karen would target residents with expensive vehicles, create legal justification through trumped-up violation, coordinate removal with Premier Auto Recovery, which we later discovered was also owned by Morrison Holdings, transport vehicles to Barrett's auction house, and split the profits with Bradley Morrison. The entire operation was designed to look like legitimate HOA enforcement while generating hundreds of thousands of dollars in stolen vehicle sales. But as we dug deeper into the financial records, we realized the car theft was just the beginning. Morrison Holdings had tentacles throughout our city government. They owned the towing company that handled abandoned vehicles citywide. They owned the storage facility where vehicles were supposedly held before disposal. They even owned the scrapyard that issued destruction certificates for vehicles that were allegedly Jake. They're not just stealing cars from our HOA. They're running this operation across the entire city. The numbers were staggering. In the past 2 years alone, Morrison Holdings had processed over 300 abandoned vehicle disposals from 12 different HOA communities at an average vehicle value of $50,000. They were looking at a $15 million theft ring operating under the cover of municipal law enforcement. But the most chilling discovery came when Jake pulled up his uncle's personal financial records, information he had access to through a family trust established by their grandfather, David. 6 months ago, Uncle Brad's primary residence was appraised at $450,000. Last week, he purchased a $2.3 million estate in Millionaires Row. His city council's salary is $87,000 per year. The mathematical impossibility was obvious. Bradley Morrison was living far beyond any legitimate means, and the timeline matched perfectly with the escalation of Karen's vehicle targeting operations. As we compiled our evidence, a disturbing thought occurred to me. Jake, if your uncle knows about your drone flights, and if he's been tracking what areas you cover, do you think Karen knows we've discovered their operation? Jake's face went white. If she knows, then they know we have footage. David, we could be in serious danger. As if summoned by our conversation, Jake's phone rang. The caller ID showed Uncle Brad. "Don't answer it," I whispered. But Jake was already reaching for the phone. "Hey, Uncle Brad, what's Jake? We need to talk. Tonight, can you come by my office around 8 p.m. and bring your drone footage from the past few weeks? There's been some complaints about privacy violations, and I want to review what you've recorded before this becomes a legal issue." Jake's hand was shaking as he held the phone. I'm not sure I can make it tonight." "Maybe we could, Jake." Bradley's voice had gone cold, all pretense of family warmth disappearing. "This isn't a request." 8 p.m. My office. "Bring all your recordings, or this becomes a much bigger problem for everyone involved." The line went dead. "They know," I said quietly. "They know. We know." Jake was staring at his phone like it had turned into a snake. "David, what do we do? If I don't show up, Uncle Brad will know we're onto them. But if I do show up, you're not going anywhere near that office." Premier Asayid, firmly. "We need to get this evidence to someone outside their network before they can silence us." But as I said it, a terrifying realization hit me. If Bradley Morrison could manipulate city ordinances, and Karen Mitchell could weaponize HOA regulations, how deep did this corruption go? Who could we trust when the very people sworn to protect our community were the ones destroying it? That's when we heard the sound of vehicles pulling into Jake's driveway. Multiple vehicles. At 9:30 p.m., the stakes just got real. What would you do if you discovered corruption this deep and they were coming for you? Comment below with your escape plan. The headlights cut through Jake's living room windows like spotlights. 3 black SUVs in his driveway, car doors slamming. Heavy footsteps approaching the front door, and Karen Mitchell's unmistakable silhouette in that red blazer, flanked by 2 men who definitely weren't from the HOA. Back door. Now, I grabbed Jake's arm and the external hard drive containing all our evidence. Leave everything else. The knocking started just as we reached Jake's kitchen. Not the polite tap of neighbors, the authoritative pounding of people who expected immediate compliance. Jake Morrison. This is an official city inspection regarding unauthorized surveillance activities. Open the door immediately. Bradley Morrison's voice carried the weight of government authority, but there was something else underneath. Desperation. Fear. The voice of a man whose 5th operation was about to crumble. We slipped through Jake's back patio door and into the darkness of his backyard. My heart was pounding so hard, I was sure they'd hear it from inside the house. Jake was clutching his drone controller and backup batteries, old habits from his engineering days, always preparing for contingencies. "My car's in the garage," Jake whispered. "If we can make it around the side of the house." Bang. 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 The front door sounded like it was about to splinter. Forget the car. They'll have people watching it. I pulled out my phone and dialed 911, but the call wouldn't connect. No signal. "Jake! Are they jamming our phones?" His face went white as he checked his device. Full bars, but no data. Uncle Brad must have brought some kind of signal blocker. "David, they're not just trying to scare us. They're running a professional operation." The sound of breaking glass came from inside Jake's house. They'd stopped asking for permission. "This way," Jake whispered, leading me toward the back fence that separated his property from the wooded area behind our subdivision. "There's a trail that leads to the fire station on Maple Street. If we can get there." We climbed the 6-foot fence, just as flashlight beams began sweeping Jake's backyard. I could hear Karen's voice, sharp and commanding. "Check the garage, the basement, everywhere." They couldn't have gone far with all that equipment. The woods were darker than I'd expected, but Jake navigated them like he'd done this before. Probably because these were the same woods where he'd retrieved his drone dozens of times after practicing flight patterns. "Jake," I whispered as we pushed through the underbrush, "how many people do you think they brought?" "At least 6. Maybe more. This isn't just Uncle Brad and Karen anymore. They've got professional help." He paused, listening to the distant sounds of searching. "David, we need to face facts. If they're willing to break into my house, they're not planning to let us walk away from this." 20 minutes of careful hiking brought us to the edge of the woods, where we could see the lights of Maple Street Fire Station. But as we prepared to emerge from the tree line, Jake grabbed my arm. "Wait. Look at the parking lot." 2 more black SUVs were positioned near the fire station entrance. Men in dark clothing were stationed at intervals around the building. They'd anticipated our escape route. "How did they know we'd come here?" I asked. Jake's expression was grim, because Uncle Brad helped design our neighborhood's emergency evacuation routes when he was first elected to the city council. He knows every path, every exit, every place someone might run. We were trapped. Behind us, flashlights were getting closer as Karen's search teams combed through the woods. Ahead of us, Bradley's people had blocked our only obvious escape route, and with our phones jammed, we had no way to call for help. That's when Jake had an idea that was either brilliant or completely insane. "David, what if we don't run away? What if we go toward them instead?" "Are you completely out of your mind? Think about it. They're expecting us to try to escape, to hide, to avoid confrontation. But what if we do the opposite? What if we force a public confrontation where they can't just make us disappear quietly?" Jake pulled out his drone controller. "It's almost midnight, but there's still traffic on Main Street, and my drone has a live stream function that broadcasts directly to social media. If we can get close enough to Karen and Uncle Brad, if we can get them to admit what they're doing on camera, that's suicide. Jake, they're not going to just confess because you're pointing a camera at them. Maybe not, but they're also not going to commit murder on a live video stream that's being broadcast to potentially hundreds of viewers in real time." As crazy as it sounded, Jake's plan might be our only shot. We couldn't outrun them, we couldn't hide from them, and we couldn't call for help. But we could expose them in a way that made us too dangerous to silence quietly. Okay, I said, but if this goes wrong, at least the evidence will survive, even if we don't. We circled back through the woods, approaching Jake's house from a different angle. The search teams had spread out, giving us an opportunity to get closer without being detected immediately. Jake launched his drone from a concealed position about 200 yards from his driveway, where Karen's SUVs were still parked with their headlights, creating an impromptu command center. "Live stream is active," Jake whispered, watching his phone screen as the drone camera focused on the scene below. 37 viewers already. It's automatically posting to my social media accounts. Through the drone's camera, we could see Karen Mitchell in full command mode, directing the search with military precision. She was no longer the prim HOA president we thought we knew. This was someone comfortable with criminal operations, someone who'd clearly done this before. But it was Bradley Morrison's appearance that truly shocked us. The mild-mannered city councilman was carrying what appeared to be a pistol, and he was coordinating with 3 men who looked like private security contractors. "Jake, are you getting this?" Every second. And look at the viewer count. 86 people, and climbing. Someone's sharing this stream. That's when Karen looked up. She'd heard the distinctive whistle of Jake's drone hovering overhead. There. The drone. She pointed directly at Jake's aircraft. "Bradley, they're recording us." Bradley Morrison's response was swift and terrifying. He raised his weapon toward the drone, but Jake was faster. Years of drone racing had given him reflexes that saved our evidence and possibly our lives. The drone shot upward and sideways, just as Bradley fired 3 shots into the night sky. The gunshots were clearly audible on the live stream, and the viewer count exploded past 200. "Holy God! Uncle Brad just shot at us on live television," Jake muttered, maneuvering the drone to a safer distance while keeping the camera focused on the chaos below. Karen was screaming at Bradley about the live stream, about witnesses, about how they needed to contain this situation immediately. But it was too late for containment. The evidence was already out there, being watched and recorded by hundreds of people in real time. That's when the sirens started. Multiple police cruisers were approaching from different directions, their red and blue lights cutting through the darkness. But instead of relief, Jake and I felt a new wave of terror. Because if Bradley Morrison could manipulate city ordinances and control municipal operations, how many police officers were also part of his network? "David," Jake said quietly, "we need to hope those cops are honest, because if they're working with Uncle Brad..." The first police car to arrive screeched to a halt in front of Karen's SUV. An officer emerged with his weapon drawn, but instead of confronting Karen and Bradley, he was looking around frantically, as if searching for threats. "This is Sergeant Martinez." The officer's voice carried clearly through the drone's microphone. "I need backup at this location immediately. We have reports of shots fired, and what appears to be an active kidnapping operation in progress." Jake and I looked at each other with hope for the first time in hours. Sergeant Martinez wasn't part of the conspiracy. He was responding to citizen reports about the live stream. Karen stepped forward, presumably to explain the situation, but her confident demeanor cracked when she realized that everything she was about to say was being broadcast live to over 400 viewers. As more police cars arrived, Bradley Morrison made a decision that would change everything. He walked toward Sergeant Martinez with his hands raised, but the words he spoke next would either save us or doom us all. "The conspiracy is unraveling in real time. Do you think Bradley will try to bribe the police or throw Karen under the bus? Drop your predictions in the comments." "Officer, thank God you're here," Bradley Morrison said, his voice smooth as silk, despite having just fired shots at a drone. "We've been trying to apprehend 2 criminals who've been conducting illegal surveillance on city officials and residents." But Sergeant Martinez wasn't buying it. Jake's live stream had reached over 600 viewers, and the police dispatch had received dozens of calls about shots being fired and suspicious activity. More importantly, Martinez could see the drone hovering overhead, still broadcasting everything. "Sir, I need you to lower your weapon immediately and step away from the vehicle," Martinez commanded. his own gun drawn but pointed downward. "We have reports of gunfire and what appears to be an organized intimidation operation." Karen stepped forward, and for a moment I thought she might actually try to charm her way out of this. After all, she'd been manipulating people through authority and bureaucracy for years. But the stress of the situation had cracked her perfect composure, and what came out was pure desperation. "Sergeant Martinez, I am Karen Mitchell, president of the Willowbrook Gardens HOA. These individuals have been conducting industrial espionage against our community and city government. Councilman Morrison and I were simply trying to recover stolen HOA property when, ma'am—" "I'm going to stop you right there," Martinez interrupted, "because everything you're saying is being broadcast live to hundreds of people right now, and you have the right to remain silent." That's when Bradley Morrison made his fatal mistake. Instead of staying quiet or asking for a lawyer, his political instincts kicked in. He tried to control the narrative. "Sergeant, you don't understand the complexity of this situation. These criminals have been blackmailing city officials and threatening public safety. I have documentation that proves—" "Councilman Morrison," Martinez said firmly, "I need you to put your weapon on the ground and step back now." But Bradley wasn't done. With over 700 viewers watching the live stream, he apparently decided that his only option was to double down on his lies and hope his political connections could save him later. "Officer Martinez, I am ordering you as a city councilman to arrest these individuals for violation of Municipal Code 43-80, unauthorized surveillance of government officials. It was the wrong move with the wrong cop." Sergeant Martinez had been on the force for 15 years, and he wasn't impressed by political posturing. "Sir, you are not my commanding officer, and you cannot order me to do anything. For the last time, put your weapon down." That's when Karen Mitchell completely lost control. "You don't understand," she screamed, her perfect HOA president facade crumbling entirely. "We've built something important here. Property values in Willowbrook Gardens have increased by 37%. The community is pristine. These people want to destroy everything we've accomplished." Jake, still piloting his drone from our hidden position, zoomed the camera in on Karen's face. Even in the dark, her desperation was clearly visible to the growing online audience. "Ma'am, what exactly have you accomplished?" Martinez asked, genuinely curious now. And that's when Karen made the confession that would end her criminal career forever. "We removed eyesore vehicles. We maintained community standards. Yes, we profited from disposal fees, but every penny went back into community improvements." Karen was gesturing wildly now, completely oblivious to the fact that she was admitting to theft on live television. "Those cars were legally abandoned according to municipal code. We had every right to dispose of them." Bradley realized what was happening and tried to stop her, but it was too late. "Karen, shut up. Don't say another word." But Karen was beyond rational thought. 8 years of unchallenged authority had convinced her that she was always right, that her methods were justified, and that anyone questioning her was simply too stupid to understand her vision. "We generated over $15 million in disposal revenue over the past 2 years. $15 million that went toward improving our communities. Bradley helped pass the legislation that made it all legal." Sergeant Martinez looked directly at the hovering drone, apparently realizing that he was now part of a live broadcast that would likely be used as evidence in court. "Ma'am, are you confessing to a theft and conspiracy operation involving stolen vehicles?" "They weren't stolen," Karen shrieked. "They were legally disposed of, according to municipal codes that Councilman Morrison helped establish. The owners were compensated according to state abandoned vehicle statutes." "What about the fact that the vehicles went to Barrett's auction house, which you own?" Martinez asked. Someone in his department had clearly been doing real-time research while the live stream played. Karen's face went completely white. She looked at Bradley, who was now staring at her with undisguised horror. "How do you know about Barrett's?" she whispered. "Because, ma'am, your entire conversation is being broadcast live to over 900 people, and our department has received dozens of tips with detailed information about your operation." That's when Bradley Morrison made his final, desperate play. "Officer, I want to make a deal. I have information about a criminal conspiracy involving HOA fraud, vehicle theft, and municipal corruption. I'm willing to cooperate fully in exchange for immunity." Karen spun around to face Bradley, her expression transforming from desperation to pure rage. "You coward. This was your idea. You're the one who designed the whole system. You're the one who said we could make millions if we just optimized the abandoned vehicle disposal process." "Karen, stop talking!" But Karen Mitchell had spent 8 years being the smartest person in every room, and she wasn't about to let Bradley Morrison throw her under the bus. "Oh, I'll stop talking. Bradley." "Right after I tell Sergeant Martinez about the 17 other city council members taking kickbacks from Morrison Holdings. Right after I mention the mayor's wife getting a brand new Mercedes from our disposal operations. Right after I explain how you've been laundering money through municipal contracts for 3 years. The silence that followed was deafening. Bradley Morris's face had gone completely, and even Karen seemed to realize that she'd just demolished any possibility of a plea deal. Sergeant Martinez, meanwhile, was speaking quietly into his radio, calling for backup, detectives, and what sounded like federal agents. "Ladies and gentlemen," Jake whispered into his phone as he continued recording, "I think we just witnessed the confession that's going to bring down half our city government." The live stream viewer count had exploded past 1,500 people, with comments pouring in from local news outlets requesting permission to use the footage. Jake's spontaneous documentary had become the most important piece of evidence in what would soon be known as the largest municipal corruption case in our state's history. Over the next hour, we watched from the woods as Karen Mitchell and Bradley Morrison were arrested, as additional police units secured the scene, and as FBI agents arrived to begin their investigation. Jake's drone captured every moment, creating an unbroken chain of evidence that would make conviction virtually guaranteed. 3 months later, Karen Mitchell was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison for conspiracy, theft, money laundering, and racketeering. Bradley Morrison received 15 years after investigators discovered that the corruption extended to municipal contracts worth over $40 million. 17 other city officials were arrested in the following weeks. Barrett's auction house was seized by federal agents, and over 200 stolen vehicles were returned to their owners. Our HOA was dissolved and reformed under state oversight, with new leadership and transparent financial reporting. As for Jake and me, we became inadvertent heroes in our community. Jake's drone footage was used in congressional hearings about municipal corruption, and we were both awarded commendations from the state attorney general's office. But the most satisfying moment came 6 months later, when I received a letter from the new HOA board. They were returning my $500 violation fine with interest, along with a formal apology for the administrative errors of the previous leadership. Sometimes justice really is served. You just need the right technology, the right timing, and a drone pilot brave enough to risk everything for the truth. Our neighborhood is finally free from corruption, and our property values are higher than ever, achieved through legitimate community improvement instead of criminal conspiracy. What would you do if you uncovered corruption in your community? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to subscribe for more real-life justice stories.